Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Gems of War. It's Monday, so we're going to have a look at what's in the Soulforge, and I'll give you my opinion on what I think is good and bad in there. What's worth crafting and what's worth avoiding. But like I do every Monday, always pop into the shop first thing and take a look at the new troop that's in there. This one is called Narwhal. Let's take a look at this. Destroys a column and deals true damage to the last enemy, then submerges itself. So, yeah, and nothing special troop there. Interesting first trait though, 10% chance to create a wish gem when my turn begins. Right, so ordinarily I'd always grab as many of them as you can, get it up to Mythic if you can, if you have enough glory, totally worth it. You get a bunch of, in this case, Arcane Spirit Trait Stones, a bunch of gold, glory keys and more besides. Right, and while I'm here as well, I always grab the Spoils of War. Always worth grabbing 10 of them if you have spare glory as well. Easy way to get some event keys and treasure maps if you enjoy the treasure hunt. Let's take a look in the Soulforge itself. See what we've got today. Anything good? I always start with the weapons. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. Usually I'll skip the ones that are there all the time, but I haven't gone over them for a while, so we'll go over them today just ever so briefly. Trick and Treat. I really love this weapon. It inflicts all negative status effects on an enemy and grants myself all the positive ones. So effectively, Reflection of Good and Essence of Evil all rolled into one, but without the effect of the explosion that those weapons cause. So no mana generation from this, but still a really, really handy weapon. I love that weapon. Totally worth getting if you haven't got it already. Duskbringer. Got it a little while ago and I've never really used it, to be honest. It deals damage to all enemies, boosted by purple allies and enemies, then death mark all enemies. And if there are 13 or more brown gems, gain 2 magic. Fairly high mana cost at 25. Yeah, but never really used it. It's probably good somewhere, but like I say, it's probably more completionist rather than anything. You don't see it in many PvP teams, and that normally is a guide to what is a good weapon or good troop a lot of the time. If you see a troop or weapon in a PvP, or it's essentially, or even more, Guild Wars, then it's normally a very good weapon or very good troop. If you see a troop or weapon and it makes you worried straight away, you think, oh god, I've got to deal with that one, then that is a sign of a decent weapon or decent troop. Now, Ocean's Protector eliminates all armor from an enemy, and you gain life equal to armor eliminated and submerge all allies. Was good a little while ago, but submerge is becoming a little bit of a handicap now with Captain McCaw killing outright any submerged allies. If a person or a player scouts you and they can see you're using this, or you're against the Captain McCaw, then submerge is not a good thing. But if you're against like a Queen Beatrix team or King Gobtruffle, then submerge is absolutely superb because they cannot damage you while you're submerged. So certainly a decent weapon against certain enemies, but otherwise nothing too fantastic. Soul of Xanathos. Deal damage to an enemy boosted by souls collected and steal their mana. Very completist, as is the Heart of Xanathos. Deal damage to all enemies and death mark divine enemies and disease night enemies. So yeah, handy against divine enemies maybe, but little else. Dawnstone, I really like this. Give an ally life and half their mana, then cleanse, barrier and enchant them. Now that's really handy on a troop that uses a lot of mana. I've used this on a team with Tina in it because Tina uses a lot of mana, so she would get half the mana cost straight away, as well as enchant, which means they can be well on their way to being charged in no time because that will increase every single round and you can still collect mana for them in the normal way. And that's a really good way of getting a powerful troop charged up nice and quick. I do like Dawnstone. Dawnbringer deals damage to all enemies boosted by yellow allies and enemies, then give all allies barrier. If there are 13 or more red gems, gain 2 magic. So there's a lot of things have to happen there to get the most out of that, but it's still a really, really handy weapon regardless. The deal damage to all enemies is good. Give all allies barrier is really handy. And obviously if you're in a team that's all yellow, especially against yellow enemies as well, then it gets better and better. Dawnbringer is still absolutely worth crafting should you get to the stage where you have 1,000,000 souls. Broken Guard gives armour and 5 attack to all allies. So that's fairly handy. If there are 13 or more yellow gems, give 4 life and magic to all allies. So kind of completionist. To win games you basically have to do damage, and that is basically making your troops more resilient to being attacked rather than actually doing damage yourself. Shattered Blade deals scatter damage boosted by Divine and Knight allies. Very completionist. Eye of Xanathos deals damage to an enemy and steal 5 points from a random skill. If the enemy is Fey, deal a triple damage. So this is a sort of weapon you're only going to be using against Fey opponents, and even then the damage is not always going to be enough to one-shot them if you're on a high level. But again, a lot of these are completionist weapons. I'm going to ignore these Curse Breaker ones because these are only there because I have the Soulforge on level 20. So I'll just jump straight to these new ones we've got here. Flint and Lock of Blackhawk. Remove all blue gems and deal damage to an enemy boosted by gems removed. If the enemy is from Blackhawk, deal double damage. So this is the sort of weapon you want to be using only when you're fighting enemies from Blackhawk. It can be good, but mostly completionist, nothing too fantastic there. Captain's Cutlass. Deal damage to an enemy boosted by rogue allies. Then create a mix of 6 blue and red gems for each rogue ally. Now this weapon could be handy in the this week's event, but it depends upon what team you pick, because there's just seen there's one further up. No, that was the one. Oh, Pirate Signet, that was the one. Yes, so depending upon your team, either this one or the Captain's Cutlass could be handy. If you've got rogue allies, then that'd be all, the band one to pick. If you just happen to have all your troops from Blackhawk, then that'd be one to maybe go for. It depends. So depending upon your team for the event, either one of those, Captain's Cutlass or Pirate Signet, may well be useful. Now Frost Sword deals damage to the first enemy and deal triple damage if they use red mana. So a fairly low level weapon, cheap to get, but can do high damage if you're against a red team. But overall nothing essential there, but yeah, certainly Pirate Signet or Captain's Cutlass could be handy in the event depending upon your team. Now the troops. Darksmith Drenzer is only there because I have the Soulforge on level 20 again, so I'll go over him a different day. Just go over these ones quickly. Hatire Ascendant. Create 6 green gems, then converts all green gems to lycanthropy gems, and summon 1 to 3 Winter Wolves. Not found a particularly good use for this yet, because the spell is a little bit strange, and the fact that they're a boss means they can be one-shotted by a troop with a Godslayer trait. So yeah, more completionist than essential for me on the Hatire Ascendant. The Jonas Tower is surprisingly good in first place. Deals damage to the first 2 enemies and stun them, and then gain barrier. So it does damage and gains barrier, which obviously protects itself from one shot. As well as that, it reduces damage from scars by 50% as the first trait, invulnerable on the second trait, immune to all status effects, devour, mana drain, transform, lycanthropy, and lethal damage. This thing cannot be just it cannot be destroyed by like devour things that kill things in one go. It's immune to that, so that's really handy, and it can be quite a nice tank in first place, and it's only 16 mana cost, which is not too bad really. Enraged Kurandara deals damage to all enemies boosted by Doom Skulls, then convert yellow gems to Doom Skulls and conjure a Doom Storm. Interesting traits: immune to all status effects, devour, mana drain, transform, lycanthropy, and lethal damage is pretty handy, as is Curse of Damnation, 40% chance to curse all enemies when my turn begins. I don't think this one's particularly that much better than the standard Kurandara, but it is very expensive to craft, and again is put there I think mainly for completist reasons, rather than one that's particularly an outstanding troop. Now Sycorax doubles a chosen colour on the board, then create 3 more gems of that colour then give life to all allies of that colour. So when you think of the trolls, like the forest troll and things like that, that create the same sort of thing but with a specific colour, this thing can do that to all the colours. So whichever colour is there the most, providing you've got someone on your team that uses that colour, you're going to really benefit from that. So this is a really, really handy troop. You can really boost up the life of your entire team with Sycorax in a really cool way, and is very capable of just looping and looping and looping until you choose that you've got enough life for your entire team. So very handy for that, and a very, very good troop. And some handy traits as well. Impervious, immune to all status effects, Devour, Lycanthropy and Mana Burn is great. And all elemental allies gain 1 attack, and armor at the start of my turn is kind of handy but not exactly fantastic. I think the middle one is the best trait there. So yeah, very, very good troop there. Totally worth getting. Mother of Darkness deals true damage to an enemy and the enemy below them, boosted by purple gems. The boost is 1-to-1, so if there's an extra 10 purple there, then you'll do an extra 10 damage. And if an enemy dies, create 12 purple gems, otherwise summon 2 Sisters of Shadows. Now the spell is sort of interesting because you can only really cast it on the first 3 opponents. If you cast on one in last place, then you're not going to be getting any damage from anybody else. It's like you're going to be missing out on that. As well as that, the spell is a little bit strange as well, because I would rather it just then created 12 purple gems to be done with it, because the summon 2 Sisters of Shadows completely doesn't work with the spell of Mother of Darkness, because the spell is obviously deal true damage, so you would often be using this with other troops that do true damage too. And Sisters of Shadows do not deal true damage, they deal normal damage, so it just doesn't work with her own spell. It's kind of strange like that. One of the best things about this is the bleed. Inflict bleed to all enemies when matching 4 or more gems, which is really handy. So otherwise, it's a okay troop, but I don't think anything fantastic either. Azula Goth, we probably all know about. Probably the best troop in the game. Kills an enemy outright, burns and frees all remaining enemies, and then create 12 skulls. So just death all round, and Azula Goth is probably the best troop. Undisputed, I would say. And if you have those power orbs, go get him, because he's totally, utterly worth having. Unlike this fella, Xanathos, blimey, deals life, steal life, and half the magic from an enemy. And if the enemy dies, summon 1 to 3 random undead. It's a bit lame. You just do not see it in teams anymore. It's yeah, almost unusable in a way. It's nothing fantastic about that in the slightest. So maybe good as a summoner in last place, but yeah, not really worth rushing out and getting if you've got a limited amount of resources and you'd rather be spending them on something else, like Infernus, who is very, very good. Deals a high amount of splash damage to 2 random enemies, then explode 5 random gems. It doesn't sound a lot on paper, but you know, if he hits the opponents in 2nd and 3rd place, he does a hell of a lot of damage, and the explosion of those 5 random gems can often result in most of the mana generation he uses for his spell being recovered. So really, really good on that way. As well as that, he has a really good 3rd trait, burn all enemies on 4 or 5 gem matches. With the troops with a Firestorm trait, where you can do triple skull damage to burning enemies. This works really, really well in those kind of teams. And he's Divine and Elemental, which works with a big amount of other troops. So love Infernus still. Unlike poor old Queen Aurora. Oh dear. Give all other allies barrier and 34 life. Then create 10 gems of a chosen colour. Sounds good on paper, but in reality there's just not that much use for her that I've found so far. If anybody's got a Queen Aurora team that works really, really well, then stick it in the comments below, because I've had a quick look at this troop. I haven't put a ton of time into it, I have to say, but for me there's nothing fantastic about Queen Aurora in any way, shape or form. Gain bonus mana from all gem matches is a decent trait, but apart from that there's not much to get excited about that unicorn. Scroll Reborn Very, very good troop. Love this. Create 5 yellow gems, then convert all yellow gems to Doom Skulls, then summon 1 to 3 Wargs. Very similar in the way that Lord of Slaughter works. Lord of Slaughter creates a similar amount of brown gems, then converts all brown gems to Doom Skulls. This does it to yellow and does a slightly lower amount. I think Lord of Slaughter does 6 creations of brown gems, I think, if memory serves me well. And so similar to that, really, really devastating when used at the right time. And the traits are okay. The middle one's the best one. Immune to all status effects, Devour, Lycanthropy, and Mana Burn. Apart from that, the traits are nothing to get excited about. Apart from that, we're now, looks like we're into the legendaries. Don't normally recommend crafting legendaries because they're going to turn up in chests quite easily, certainly a lot more than what mythics do. Now, Anknum. This deals damage to all enemies, boosted by cursed enemies, and for every cursed enemy, give a barrier to a random ally. So that can be pretty good. The damage to all enemies is often a very, very handy spell to have. And if you've got somebody that curses enemies as well, then that is going to be really handy because you can then get a barrier for every cursed enemy to a random ally. So that is actually fairly decent for that mana cost. King Avalon, again, a fairly handy troop, deals damage to all enemies again, boosted by elf, elemental and beast allies, and has a summon as well. As well as that, he has a superb third trait. All elf allies start with 50% mana. So you will often see this in Arachnean Weaver teams and things like that, and he's absolutely essential for elf teams in that regard. Emperor Liang. Don't see this guy very much anymore. Destroys all gems of a chosen colour, then give all allies of the matching colour 33 life and 4 magic. The trouble is now there are many troops that give way more magic than that, so this guy has kind of become redundant, and I wouldn't go near even, you know, thinking about crafting him. Just wait for him to turn up in a chest for free. The third trait is kind of okay, enchant a random ally on 4 or 5 gem matches, but there are far better troops around than Liang now. Crimson Bat deals 32 in my case. It will be that when it's like that written in purple means the magic can go up or down. The higher level you are, the more that will increase. The lower level you are, you will do less damage than that. In my case, it's 32 true damage to all enemies and gain 16 life. Deal double skull damage to wounded enemies is okay, as is double skull damage versus divine. You'd be fighting a divine team. So an okay troop. Can be handy in certain true damage teams, but again, nothing essential worth crafting. The best one from these is King Avalon, from the legendaries, and from the mythics. I'm going to ignore like Azula Goth. You can't count him, he's like in a world of his own really. But Infernus and Sycorax are absolutely worth getting should you have the available diamonds. Right, there's the quick Soulforge review. If you found it useful or helpful, be cool if you liked and subscribed if you've not done so already. But most of all, thanks for watching. Catch you again next time. Bye for now.